Hello, welcome to Fitness Freedom. Today I'm joined by Ramona Kossowan. She's a women's empowerment coach. She's Canada's first gentle trauma release practitioner, and she's a fitness coach. She helps women cut through the BS of constantly trying to fix themselves and get to the root of why they keep ending up back in the same patterns. So her work blends emotional healing, nervous system work, and physical vitality to help women feel powerful, self-trusting, and unapologetic about the life they want. So beautiful. Welcome, Ramona. So happy to have you.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm happy that we can have this conversation.
It's much needed. So, can you start by just telling us a little about your story? What got you into this work?
Well, I've always kind of liked to help people get underneath whatever we see as, quote, the problem. So when I first started like a side business, I was focusing more on holistic health and herbal wellness and following in my mother's footsteps, actually. But then I kind of evolved into my own person a bit more. And fitness was something I felt was something I love to empower women with. And I used to coach at one time a holistic weight loss program, which was great, but it also brought up some issues that I was noticing with women. Over time, I felt myself kind of yearning to go a bit deeper. I didn't want to just be the fitness trainer. That's just not my whole thing. When I learned about empowerment coaching, I was intrigued because I said, oh, working with the emotions, right? The emotional levels. And that kind of put me on a path to put me in front of the Gentle Trauma Release Institute when they were at their early stages of launching internationally. And it just was so enlightening to understand more about what trauma was and how it shows up. And it's not always just typical what we might see as a clinical diagnosis. And given the opportunity, I just had to run with it. I felt so deeply aligned with this. And I just fell in love with this process to help women experience profound relief and shifts and come out of the hole they feel like they're dug into or the box they're stuck in, and see themselves in the world through different lenses. So I've been doing that
Yeah.
about 5 years now.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's so important. I've done some of my own work with somatic, so I understand how important uh, really involving your body and taking into account your history and your experience, the trauma you've been through. How do you see that manifesting? Like you said, it might not be an official clinical diagnosis, but how do you see trauma coming up in the realm of like fitness and food and our bodies working as a fitness coach? Like, how do you see the overlap there?
Yeah, it's interesting because once you see it, you can't unsee it, right? Um, what the easiest way, first of all, to think of trauma is just simply distress without resolve. So your body's bracing or adapting to a situation or a threat that's perceived that feels inescapable in some way. So you adapt and change. Um, so where I see, especially a lot of my women are that I support are over 40, over 50, and over 60. This pattern's been repeated a lot, right? So we get to that point. Trauma disconnects us from our body's cues for safety and to reduce exposure to pain and distress. So when you're in that state of being very much disconnected from your body, it can look like having it like a mindless binge on something, like how did I eat 7 brownies, right? Or veering off into the drive-through and inhaling a drive-through meal when you've carefully meal prepped all week long. Or just not being able to make yourself a priority and just commit to basic things that make you feel good, right? And what I noticed, which kind of blew my mind, is when I was in the early stages of doing this coaching with women, they naturally and organically started taking care of themselves without me prompting. This wasn't me coaching them about that. But when we heal our connection to our body and we feel safe and we stop seeking comfort or escape unconsciously, it literally changes everything. So I would have a woman say, like 3 weeks after a call, yeah, I've lost like 6 pounds. My sister said I'm glowing and I started going to the gym. Did I tell her to do that? No. She started liking herself and liking taking care of herself. Or it's not always about weight loss, but just for a lot of women, that's a problem that they express as a problem, right? So another
Mm-hmm.
woman like we did a little more work together because her experiences warranted this. And over the course of a year after our work together, she released 100 pounds. So this was just reflecting her internal healing, her connection to her body by healing the unconscious part of us. But it can be as simple as needing to hyper control, like we might call it food noise, like that endless mental chatter around food, whether it's ruminating about what you did right, what you did wrong, what you need to do, how you're going to manage that potluck or that evening out with friends without blowing it, or like fixating on counting calories and macros and feeling you need this control of some kind.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. Like it could be kind of like a almost escaping our bodies and going like, why did I, like you said, why did I eat those brownies or why am I here in the drive-through? Or, but it can also look like hyper control and really trying to zone in on everything and like perfect everything. And that could apply for workouts and exercise as well. What I know you said that like trauma is related to kind of being outside of your body or not connected with your body. Um, what, why do we take that out on food or exercise or our bodies? Do you think that there's a correlation between general trauma, or do you think a lot of the times when we're experiencing those manifestations that there's been a direct correlation involving food and exercise? Or do you think it's just like a symptom of general trauma? Does that make sense? Does that question make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, like there's so many ways it can layer in. Partly it's the society and the messaging we receive right from our youth and very young as girls and women of our behavior, or sorry, our value being tied to our appearance in some way. We start getting those diet culture messages very early. And then you can throw in some exacerbating things like a chaotic home, like your family of origin. Maybe there was mental illness or substance abuse, or you're not being emotionally supported. So your moments of love were eating Cool Whip out of a jar. That was a client's story. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The and then you add in, now what's happening? Are you in a difficult relationship? Are you trying to parent a young child or young children while working, and you literally have zero time to decompress and nurture your own self? Or are you emerging from a big change like a job loss, divorce and separation are huge, huge, huge. And that can be just something that pushes you so far beyond your resilience capacity that food jumps in as a helper in some way to cope and survive. And so sometimes it just emerges as a sign that your body's desperately craving relief in some way.
Mhm. Yeah. And that all makes sense. So how do we like, I'm just imagining feeling into that place of like, oh, this is so frustrating. I kind of can see that I have these patterns. Like I do go to food where I notice myself being really controlled if I think about it. Like I'm very tight around food and exercise. Like, how do we go from noticing that pattern and realizing we're kind of stuck in the pattern and it being trauma related to releasing that or like stopping that pattern? Like where do we need to go, what do we need to address to kind of find some healing and relief in that?
Well, I would, if you're not sure where to start, stop pushing. Okay. If you're around people or environments or absorbing social media or reading things that are forcing you to push and compare and just so much noise, um, I would encourage women to think about stop pushing, right? As soon as the urgency is gone, the pressure starts to lift. The urgency needs to go, right? Whether there is legitimate reasons, like if women, quote, need to lose weight for a certain situation. I'm going to just mention weight loss because it's just something that women are talking about all the time. They're looking for medications, injections, peptides. So let's talk about it, right? For a lot of women, it's a concern on their mind, and I want to acknowledge that. But it's really just a symptom in most cases. And there's layers to it, right? So for a lot of the women I work with, they're not looking to get sculpted and jacked. They just want to feel good, fit in their clothes, and in their own words, not look like an old lady, right? So how do we find that balance? So there, I find some pillars of self-care are wonderful to start integrating at your own level of capacity. And then consider, is there a pattern that feels very overpowering, like a compulsion, like the food noise? People, I can't get the food noise to stop without this medication. That may be the case, but I find getting underneath it with the nervous system and the emotions, and it's trauma driven. And don't think of trauma as some big thing. It isn't always. It's an accumulation
Mm-hmm.
sometimes versus
Mm-hmm.
one big thing. Sometimes there is a big thing, but that's okay. When that is released and resolved on your body's level, and your body goes, oh, I'm safe unconsciously, the food noise starts to go
Mm-hmm.
because you don't need that protection anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. It's so beautiful because that is what happens. I feel that and I've seen it too. How do we how do we release? Like how do we get to that place? What's a what does that look like? How does it feel like in your work? How do you help clients get to that release?
Well, if a woman comes to me and we're a good fit to work together and we're both leaning in going, heck yes, well, let's work together. What we're going to first look at is the emotional and mental and physical symptoms that are the most bothersome for them. And when did they show up? Because it's a good sign, it's a symptom of trauma if it emerged seemingly out of nowhere or it suddenly got worse for no particular reason. And sometimes it's just an accumulation and you had too many difficult things going on at once, and that can trigger a trauma response, even though it's not like quote abuse or something. So in the setting, if I'm going to support a woman directly with that, we're going to use the protocols in this specific nervous system work to get underneath and release what's anchoring that. So sometimes an event that happened 25 years ago, when that's released, your brain changes. You literally see things differently without being prodded and poked to do so. So that's an early part of my work. But then in the middle ground is more coachy. It's like, okay, where's the residue of who I had to become to survive? The beliefs about myself and my place in the world, the loudness of the inner critic, the lack of boundaries, the rigid control. What is the residue that I'm now healing and integrating? So the first thing I like to think about for women is giving yourself compassion, because everything you created up until now to survive served a purpose, and it was your body's wisdom, not a character flaw.
Yeah, that's so true. Compassion, that's the first thing. Um, I like that you make it clear that trauma is not just like one event. It can be lots of micro trauma. It can be day-to-day life. Our stressors are bigger than our recovery, and we're never able to reach like that homeostasis. I've heard trauma described by a teacher as too much, too fast. It's just too much
Yeah.
for our system to handle, and then we get overwhelmed. And when we can remember that we're safe and learn to feel safe in our body and what that looks like,
Mhm.
that changes everything naturally without like forcing.
Yeah, it's definitely not. You need gentleness. And the things you could think about too are, what are rituals and routines that tell my body I love you? And that might be having a cup of tea when you get home instead of heading to the pantry and hailing a box of crackers. Or it might be giving yourself some space in your schedule rather than filling it to the max, so that you have unproductive time. Or thinking about what level of physical activity supports me well versus what feels like forcing to achieve an
Mhm.
outcome that isn't really necessary.
Yeah, I think that even giving yourself permission, depending on where you are, but giving yourself permission to not exercise for a while or not to like do the high intensity stuff or to not like try to always eat clean or try to like do things right, like giving yourself permission to like kind of mess up or notice in your day when you start to spike, like your stress starts to go really high, because a lot of the times it's happening without even realizing it, like what is causing that response, that trauma response to come up in
Yeah.
your day to day, because it might be something really simple like a boss at work or a colleague at work or a certain time of day when your kids come home or whatever it is, like that could be like something that charges it, and just noticing those waves in your day-to-day life. can be really helpful for acknowledging, oh, this is not really actually super dangerous, but why is my body reading it as that?
Yeah, and just like just knowing your body is wise. It has
Mm-hmm.
wisdom, even if you don't even consciously know why it's doing something. It has a reason. So, for example, if that toxic boss is activating extreme triggers all the time and your nervous system's just shot, well, you probably need to find a new job. But for in the meantime, if this is to your body a familiar experience to what you've had before in some way, that full response, full blown response is now generated. So what I've found is when we address what the original threat was and resolve it on a body level, so you're like resolved, it's no longer intrusive, the triggers go down.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they do show up, they're not as intense or they're more short lived, or you actually recognize them as a trigger versus having like a mental blackout. And what did I just do and say in that situation? I'm like, oh my gosh, I lost it. Right. So it's just things get tamed. It doesn't mean you're calm all the time. That's not normal. But you recognize this is a trigger and you can feel it in your body. And then you give yourself some TLC to soothe.
Yes, yes. Recognizing it is so helpful. Awareness is the agent for change. I kind of want to bring this into because I think so many of us are suffering and going through this day-to-day stuff, and we're putting it on food, we're putting it on our bodies, we're putting it in exercise, like trying to fix ourselves and like make ourselves better, hoping that, we'll reach it, and we are feeling depleted and defeated. Uh, and it like we don't have to do it alone, and it can be like very isolating. But let's just say that someone is dealing with a lot of stress around food, and maybe it could be like they're always stressed about what to eat for dinner, or they find themselves like they determine to be really really quote unquote good for the day, and then at the end of the day they're wiped and they're just like go back to the habits that they don't really want to do, but they just find themselves there. Like what can they do, like practically? Of course, like be compassionate, notice it, but like what can they do beyond that to like help themselves?
Well, a couple of things I'm glad you brought that up that I focused on in one of my containers, which is called the food satisfaction blueprint. So it's actually a structured step-by-step process to help repair and heal your relationship with food, right? And with someone, I've done the trauma work first, just to get to a point where they're ready. But one thing I like to teach in this is the moderation and satisfaction versus the deprivation and indulgence scale. So over here we have deprivation, being good all day,
Mm-hmm.
water, black coffee, even though you hate black coffee, carrot sticks, rice cakes, protein shakes, dried chicken breast, broccoli. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then on the other side is, I'm going to make you spit your water out, aren't I? I just about sprayed. So on the other side is overindulgence, binging, right? Before you know it, you've eaten 2 sleeves of Oreos and a family-sized bag of Doritos, right? Deprivation will eventually swing pendulum to indulgence. It's inevitable, so just know that.
Mm-hmm.
What I like to help women to master through a process is the middle ground, where you say, I'm good, I'm good, I feel good. I can make mindful choices and master what works for me to feel energized, satisfied, mindful without obsessing. So it's not the deprivation, and obviously indulgence is stressful as well. We want that middle ground, and where food stop being morally labeled, right? So it's a process. It takes a bit to unlearn diet culture, which feeds nervous system dysregulation. And then from there, you're just fine tuning. What is my body like? What do I feel good when? What do I feel not so good when? And fine tune, start where you're at instead of trying to do some overreaching thing that doesn't hold the litmus test in real life. It does not hold, right? So don't even go there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that so much of why diet culture and food and trauma and stress go so well together is because there are rules that we're given about what foods are good, what foods are not. And so many of us don't even ask, what do I like? What do I want? And we're in this like constantly stressful, busy state, like all the time. And it's not just an individual issue. Of course, it's a systemic issue and like
Yeah.
parenting and motherhood and all that stuff. But like we're going, 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 and we don't really, like you said, we don't like pause and stop to ask, what do I need? What do I want? What do I really like? Like, what food do I
Yeah.
like? I know this, this food is healthy, but do I actually like it? Or even the sometimes the like quote unquote junk food, we don't actually like it. We just like are doing it because that's like giving ourselves permission to be rebels, you know?
Exactly. So, for example, sometimes I talk about archetypes in my work, and one of them is the rebel. So she's like a teenage girl, and you tell her you're going to be good all day, she's going to give you the finger and go the exact opposite direction because she doesn't want to be controlled anymore. Um, so part of that is healing her and taking charge as that middle ground, the woman energy is
Mm,
nurturing, caring for, responsible for, um, and not letting the teenager drive the bus. I think too, women, some of the trauma patterns of being overly accommodating, caregiving, centering other people in your life as your identity, it's woven into the thread of society and how they adapted to belong.
mhm.
So healing that, which is unconscious and can feel like a compulsion when trauma is driving the bus, helps us to come back to, I'm actually going to set limits. I'm going to say some no to some stuff. I'm going to reprioritize some things, and I'm going to delegate or, just set some limits, right? So that I actually can do what's important for me, and that is not selfish. But for some women, because the trauma is at play, being selfish is like intolerable, like
Yeah.
intolerable, right?
Mhm.
So it's a healing process.
Yeah, and you mentioned the archetype of the rebellious teenager. It might be helpful just to, could you share a little bit more about what those archetypes look like?
Oh, sure, yeah. And I have I think in one of my free things I shared that with what I've sent you, but this was part of my learning with the what's called the SWAT Institute, which is where my personal empowerment coaching training was. And the
Mm-hmm.
founder, she wrote a book called The Emotional Edge, and she talks a lot about archetypes. So at the center, at the top hierarchy is woman energy, or if you're not don't then identify as woman, you would say adult energy. Okay, so and then you have some sub archetypes that are not empowered. So we're going to call them your wounded parts. Okay, one is the child or daughter, one is the mother or parent. Okay. So for me, like one of my dominant archetypes was mother energy in the ruler form. So walled up, kind of judgy, stiff, controlling, my way or the highway, hard on myself,
Mm-hmm.
not listening to my body's cues. I'll push myself, push myself. And then on the other side of mother, a mother energy might be more like the martyr, simply sacrificing herself to overfunction for everything and everyone else. And you can be in mother energy and be 5 years old, just to be clear. It's not your age or your parenting. Okay. So neither one of those wounded parts in the mother energy are truly connected to her body, right? And then on the other side is the child energy or the daughter. And she can go a few different ways, but one would be like the good girl. She doesn't rock the boat. She suppresses her needs, and you're smiling.
Yeah, because this is really familiar.
You're like, oh, okay, yeah. And she's suppressing her needs like she doesn't even have it. She's so easy to get along with. She's like an old soul. No, she's not. She's adapted to be that way. And then, um, so she suppressed her needs and stuffed them down so much that something's got to let the steam valve off. So sometimes it's food. It might be
Mm-hmm.
other things, but it might be that. And then the other swing might be more like the rebel. I like to call her Rebel Renee. So she doesn't not like to be controlled, told what to do, restricted, boxed in, contained, because she can't stand it anymore. She feels powerless. So even though you're trying to do everything right and you're over on the deprivation side of things, she's going to be like, nope, I'm going to sabotage that because we are having none of this, right? And she'll just quote sabotage. Even if it's other things like shopping online, forgetting to gas the car up for the seventh time, not doing her taxes, right? Those are all examples of child energy.
It reminds me kind of like IFS, internal family systems and parts work. We have different parts of ourselves, and
Yeah.
ultimately we want us, like you, the deepest part of you, the adult part, to like be in control, be in charge, be
Yeah.
parent, and make sure that you're making helpful decisions for moving forward.
Yeah.
But it also takes being aware of that. So that's so helpful to hear those archetypes. And like, I'm sure a lot of people listening can identify themselves just like I did, listening to those
Yeah.
archetypes.
What helps to take the pressure off, love on them, love those parts of you. You're not getting rid of them. You're
Mm,
healing them and bringing them home like the little kid or the tired old lady, right? So you're bringing them home and taking care of them and quite often reparenting them and giving them the validation, the safety and acceptance and belonging that they are truly craving.
mhm.
You're going to be the one to give it to them.
Yeah, exactly. They're not running the show. They're
No,
not,
they're not equipped.
yeah,
It doesn't
they're
go
not
so
equipped
well.
either.
Yeah, it's
It's
not
true.
so good. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, like you said, kind of in between that, like deprivation and an indulgence, there's the moderate, like the part of you that's like in that wise mind place, not just the rational or the emotional, but in the wise mind place. What do you see when you work with people and like as they process these things and they like heal from trauma and release a lot? How do you see their relationship with food and exercise changing? Because you mentioned that you're not even working sometimes directly with the symptom, but it naturally relieves itself just from doing the work and healing the trauma. Like, what do you see in the transformation towards the end of this process?
Yeah, it's so fascinating and for me so gratifying. Like one of my clients, a special woman, um, she was like early 60s, but this would apply to a woman a couple decades younger too, in a good marriage with a good man. And she's like, why am I having all these problems? Right? Like I sit down and I find my fingers clenching. And for her, weight loss and gain has been an ongoing lifelong thing since as long as she's been an adult, right? So we worked together focusing on just freeing her up from the trauma that was showing up now because she was now safe enough to start processing, right? Whereas previously married to a narcissist, previously abusive parents. This woman was just a gem. So what we found is after a few months of working together, she started to love her body. Like she woke up tingling with excitement to be in her body and actually realized her body had helped her through so many things and it loved her. And she just had this deep appreciation. And then what changed externally is like she had done a popular program, Weight Watchers, in the past. So, before we started working together, she started going back to Weight Watchers again. And a lot of the same regulars are going back to Weight Watchers again. Nothing against them, but underneath there was nothing being addressed, right? So what happened is she started to not need Weight Watchers anymore. She stopped following the structure. She started tuning in, making choices that supported her, but also having an ice cream and not caring. And then she started to not be afraid. So before she wouldn't be caught dead at the pool to do workouts or whatever. Now she's like, I'm just going to put this on and strut around like nobody's business and go do my exercise, right? And she started to feel safe because before she would like lose weight to a certain amount and then fall right back because your body's like, nope, that's the threshold. You're not safe. You're not worthy. Back up, right? So
Mhm.
this way, she got to a place that she had never been able to get to before in decades, like just where she wanted to be, where she feels really, really good. Active, strong, mindful eating, a size where she felt like she could move good and her clothes
Mhm.
felt good. And this all happened after our initial or during our trauma work. So what I've initiated now for some women is I have the pathways for the next step, like the fitness and the food relationship and the long term, how do I live in my body? Without reactivating the trauma, because I don't want them going back on some diet or some body obsession cardio sort of situation. So it's all just flows a bit better.
It's like you're operating from yourself, not from those parts or from where you think you should
Yeah.
be. It's like
Yeah.
coming back to yourself, like who you
Exactly.
are. And that's very aligned with my work as well.
Yeah.
This is so fascinating and such important work, really important work. So I ask my questions, all my guests a question, the same question. But before I ask that, Can you share with listeners where they can find you and what you might want to offer them based on what we've shared today?
Of course. Yeah. So you'll see me on a lot of the socials, like under Ramona K Coaching. LinkedIn is under my name, Ramona Kossowan. Website, Ramona K Coaching. And I have a site specific to the gentle trauma release method, gentletraumacoach.com. So lots to explore there. And then I have some free resources that can help you just take what we talked about here, these little nuggets, and expand on it and personalize it to you. One is called a gentle trauma assessment, where you can explore physical, emotional, and cognitive symptoms and how they may be connected to trauma and shine a light on an opportunity for healing that maybe you hadn't considered. And then I have another one with what's your dominant archetype. And I think I shared the one with food with
Mm-hmm, you
you.
did.
So it just helps to show how your dominant archetype, if you're in woman energy, it means things are going pretty good most of the time, right? If there's mother or daughter energy showing up, it'll help to kind of help you recognize where she's showing up and how she's trying to help you.
Mm-hmm.
And again, shine a light on an opportunity for healing rather than just trying harder.
Thank you so much for sharing those resources. I'm excited for
Oh,
people to
good.
get into them because they're so helpful based on what we've talked about as well. So my last question for you, Ramona, thank you so much for sharing all of your work. But if you had one message of health that you could share with the entire world, every single person on the world, if you could just have them hear this message about health, around health, what would you say?
Well, I think at the root of it is that you're worthy of just making yourself a priority. Does that mean implementing a perfect strategy? No, no. Does it mean achieving some external outcome that the world has told you it needs to be? No. But it means that you're worthy of tuning in and always making yourself a priority. There may be times that you're not at the very top, like if you have a loved one in a crisis or in the middle of something, but you're always up there, never shoved to the bottom or off the charts. And for women, this can be hard to implement. It's a practice, just practice making yourself a priority. What does that look like? It's not even just what you're eating and how you're sleeping and your movement. It's like, does this give me joy? Does this feel like a part of me, even though it's not, quote, necessary? I need to consider that without trying to explain or justify why I need to do whatever this aerial aerobics is, or if I need to go do hip hop dance classes, or if I need to go do a book study. If it gives you joy, you're worthy of finding a way to integrate that in.
Yeah, that's so beautiful and empowering. That's so beautiful and empowering. You're worthy of being important in your life. You are
Yes,
so important in your life, and no one can take care of you like you can. You're the only one who can make decisions for you. So it's your responsibility to take care of yourself to the best that you can. And then,
exactly.
yeah, that's so wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing all of this insightful knowledge and for giving us your time. And I'm so excited for everyone to listen to this. Thank you so much,
Thank you so
Ramona.
much. I hope everyone gets a lot out of it.
They will indeed.